In 1982, Colman McCarthy, after more than a dozen years writing a syndicated column for the Washington Post, decided not just to preach nonviolence, but to teach it. He became a volunteer teacher offering peace studies classes in, at that point, one of D.C.'s poorest schools. And a few years after that, he founded the Center for Teaching Peace, a nonprofit group that promotes academic programs on nonviolence. And then in 1998, after finally giving up his post column, he went into teaching full time. At one point, several years ago, he was so busy that he was teaching 8 classes in 6 schools. He currently teaches at 2 high schools, as well as at American University, the University of Maryland, and Georgetown University Law School. 4 times students at AU have voted him Professor of the Year. Now, one thing that inspired him to go into journalism initially was his own experience as a kid. Was a classroom visitor, Tom Hamilton, then with the New York Times, about going into journalism when Hamilton came to Coleman's school on Long Island in 1948. Coleman was 10 years old back then. Now, by Coleman's own rough estimate, he's instructed more than 10,000 college and high school students over the past 3 decades. A deeply committed pacifist, he teaches what he calls the other side of the story, the one he says that students aren't getting in conventional history or political science courses, where violent militaristic solutions are often presented as rational and necessary. As he notes in the preface of his new book, Teaching Peace, courses in peace have spread over a number of years, especially at the college level. Back in 1970, only 1 U.S. college offered a degree in peace studies. Now, more than 70 do, and nearly 300 are sponsoring peace studies as minors or concentrations. Of course, Coleman has written several previous books, including his 2002 work, I'd Rather Teach Peace, which recounted many of his classroom experiences. He spoke here for that, and he just reminded me that the first time he spoke at PMP was just within months of the store's opening. It opened in 1984, and Coleman across the street, and Coleman spoke there in 1985. The new book is sort of a companion to I'd Rather Teach Peace. In it, Coleman presents some of the letters exchanged over the years with former students, sharing their thoughts and his thoughts on a wide range of issues. The discussions address not only peace and war, but such social justice concerns as the death penalty, human rights, poverty, the living wage, animal rights, and vegetarianism. Coleman is a vegan. All in all, as Patrick Coy, a Kent State professor, says in the foreword to the book, these letters, quote, demonstrate the profound and long-lasting impact Coleman's approach has had on his students. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Colman McCarthy.
Thank you, Bradley. A treat to be back visiting with you and Alyssa. I did speak across the street in 1984 when there was one employee that Carla Cohen and Barbara Mead had. Now you're on this side of the street and we have more than 50 employees. And I do admire people who provide jobs. That's something that Gandhi never did, nor King ever did, but the entrepreneurs, they do it. So it's a treat to be with all of you. And we'll talk briefly about a few of the issues. We'll have plenty of time for some questions and answers and disagreement. I like people who disagree with me. I really have no choice in my line of work as a left-wing journalist. I get a fair amount of mail every week from readers around the country who call me a fool, jerk, know-nothing, ignoramus, idiot. And then I read my negative mail. Did everybody get that one? All right. There's always a few slow ones that miss the jokes. Usually people from Texas. You know, the Bushes, Rick Perry can't add, the Bush can't think, oil, cattle. So your brain goes out after a while in Texas. So we'll talk a little bit. What I usually do at the beginning of every semester to get to get the year off to a good start, I ask for a few moments of silence, reflection, and prayer. If you believe in prayer, some do and some don't. So we ought to do that now, I think, in our overscheduled, busy lives. And let's think about all the people here on this little odd planet of ours, which T.S. Eliot once called a third-rate rock spinning around a second-rate sun. That's us. And let's remember all the people here today who have been or will be victimized by violence, whether military violence, governmental violence, economic violence, emotional violence, environmental violence, legal violence, illegal violence, racial violence, homophobic violence, sexual violence, handgun violence, drone airplane violence, prison violence, domestic violence, violence towards the disabled. Let us remember our prisoners, our refugees, people without homes, without help, without hope, those who have no access to teachers, lawyers, or physical therapists, or nurses, or doctors, or engineers. Let's also remember the people in our own lives who we might have helped. We were too busy getting ahead in life, of being successful, to notice their pain. So we walked on. Let's take a few moments of silence, reflection, or prayer, and take care of that moral obligation. All right, thank you for that. It's good to do so on these occasions when we come together and kind of recollect and see what we're doing. I've got some good news for most of you. If you are an American citizen, you won the birth lottery. The odds are against it. It's about 25 to 1. If we had 100 people here and each one represented a country, only 4 out of 100 would be Americans. So we all did pretty well. So what do we do about that good fortune? Well, as a journalist at the Post for many years, I was lucky to have interviewed many of the world's great peacemakers. I've interviewed Desmond Tutu from South Africa, Mayred Cargan from Belfast, Mother Teresa from Calcutta, Muhammad Yunus from Bangladesh, Dorothy Day, Sergeant and Eunice Shriver. And I'd always ask them toward the end of every interview, how do we go about increasing peace and decreasing violence? Almost always the answer came back, you need to go where people are. Because people keep having conflicts and solving them either through violent force or nonviolent force. No third option. The advice was sound. I took it to a local high school near my office, very poor school, no cafeteria, no gym, no auditorium, no lockers, no athletic fields, and for a while, no clean drinking water. The closest school to the White House. That was 5 blocks to the east, 5 blocks on G Street to the west was the Watergate buildings. You had money and power at both ends, and in between this little poor school. So I taught there. I started out in 1982 and asked the principal, can I come in and teach a course on nonviolence? And the teacher there at the time was named Phyllis Weiss. I think, where's Phyllis right now? Phyllis, there's Phyllis in the front row. And she invited me to teach English. I said, well, I don't know much about that. I'm just a writer. But I'd rather teach peace. So that's what we did. And Phyllis Weiss has been a dear family friend all these years and a great teacher of English herself. So it's not a very difficult course to teach when you just read the literature of peace and you read some Gandhi, King, Merton, Day, Musty, Jesus, Francis, Amos, Tolstoy, Einstein, Buddha, Sojourner Truth, Adam Balloon, George Fox on the first day. And then we really get into it. And after I rattle off those names, someone jumps up and says, how'd you ever hear of all those people? How come we haven't heard of them? You haven't heard of them for an obvious reason. You've been going to conventional schools where we teach everything but. Can I back up that claim? Well, 2 questions. How many of you went to a high school where they offered you courses in peace studies? All right. These are all former students of mine. Would they just stand up again so we can all give them a round of applause? There we are. There we are. There we are. There we are. So they're back. They're back. Now, if I tell the same jokes again, okay, just start to yawn and I'll get the message. Okay, good on that question. Second question. So only about 4 or 5 hands go up. If this was a rational society, a peace society, every hand would have gone up. Second question. How many of you went to a high school where they required you to take algebra and geometry? All hands go up. So there's a good chance you graduate from high school as peace illiterates. But we're going to make sure you graduate from high school knowing all about pi r squared and bonkazoids and crankazoids and dorkazoids and lunazoids and hemorrhoids and APoids for the deep thinkers. Ah, yes. Who cares? Have you ever been to a job fair where there's a big sign, we need algebraists? I haven't seen that sign yet. But there we have it. So the course began and went well. I took it out to other schools, Georgetown Law, American U, Maryland. And I came to write this book because I met, by very odd chance, Harper Lee. I met Harper. And I'd been getting letters when I was at the Post from students. And I had a right to be about the column, and I'd always kind of put them aside. Oh, they're just students. You don't need to pay that. I'll put them in my someday soon box. So I never answered many of the letters. And then I met Harper. I met her at a little Jesuit school where I was given at Spring Hill College in Mobile, Alabama. Probably never heard of it. The second oldest Jesuit school in the country after Georgetown. And they invited me to give the commencement speech, and they offered me an honorary degree, and the other degree recipient was Harper Lee. Hers was deserved. So I went, and there we, walking down the procession to the stage at the graduation, and I started talking to Harper Lee, and I said, are you writing much these days? She said, yes, I write all the time. And I said to her, oh, my heaven, what's the name of her last book? And I kind of felt embarrassed. So finally I said, Harper, please forgive me. I try to keep up with new books. But what is the name of your last book? I want to get it. And I said, no, I don't write books. She said, I write letters to school children. And I was so touched by that. Here's this great international writer who makes, I think, royalties, about $3 million a year. And every letter she answers. So I said to myself, listen, buddy, get on your game and start answering those letters to your students. So I started to do it. And it's been a joy. We have about 50 letters from students in here, and I've written them. I've taken those letters seriously. And because you have to do that, even if they're the only ones that'll ever read it. The first letter in the book is from a young woman named Tara Lee. She happened to be writing from the U.S. Naval Academy. And I'd written a column right during the Panama invasion. And I proposed that women should not be in combat, which I also think men should not be in combat. Being a pacifist. So she wrote a letter to me, and she was an English major and wanted to be a writer. And she said, sir, you have some crazy ideas about women in war. She got off to a good first line. And then, as far as I could determine, the main thrust of your column is that war is bad. Sir, I certainly do not disagree. And she went on to give me the argument that I've often heard when I speak at the Naval Academy. And I admire the students there very much. It's a hard school to get through. So Tara Lee went on, and I wrote back to Tara, and I quoted Einstein, who said, "Our school books glorify war and conceal its horrors. They indoctrinate children with hatred. I would teach peace rather than war, love rather than hate. People should continue to fight, but they should fight for things worthwhile, not imaginary geographical lines, racial prejudices, and private greed draped in the colors of patriotism. Their arms should be weapons of the spirit, not shrapnel and tanks." So we exchanged. I had the letters put in the Washington Post in the style section. And Tara Lee invited me to her graduation. And before that, I invited her to come take my class at Georgetown Law School. I said, we can have a good dialogue. She had to get Pentagon clearance to be associated with me. Had to go up to the highest levels, and so she came faithfully once a week to a weekly seminar at Georgetown Law, and I was very touched by that. She invited me to her graduation, and we've been friends ever since. After that, she started to see how the law school operated, graduated, and went to San Diego for 5 years of mandatory service, and went to law school at night. She became a public interest lawyer. She now works for DLA Piper, I think the world's largest law firm, specializing in tracking down warlords in Africa to prosecute the people in Somalia and all those awful wars there. So Tara Lee and I have been very close all these years, but just because of a letter she wrote to me. Another letter came from a girl named Hannah Flam. Is Hannah's mom here today? I think she had to go to the airport. Hannah Flam was a student of mine at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. And I bring into my high school class periodically what I think is the best teacher in the school, a woman named Lily Flores. And who's Lily Flores? She fled El Salvador in the 1980s. As you know, that was a bloody decade. 70,000 Salvadorans killed, many, many displaced. So Lily Flores fled. She was 15 years old, made her way to South Florida at the migrant worker camps. Lasted a year, no union, no health care, mean field bosses, and then made her way north and got a job at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. And what's her job? She cleans toilet bowls. She cleans the bathrooms. We have about 12 lavatories in the school, and most days Lily is in them, cleaning. She's one of the invisible people at the school. Children rarely notice her. They're rushing by through the AP classes to get ahead in life. They don't notice Lily. Lily's almost invisible. So I bring her into class. Lily, come tell your story about Salvador and about your work here. Some of you may remember Salvador. In 1979, Archbishop Romero wrote a letter to Jimmy Carter. We're having some trouble down here in Salvador, I said to the Archbishop. Please don't send any weapons to the government. They use them on the poor, on the social workers and the priests and nuns. If you want to help the poor people of Salvador, send some food, medicine, books, bicycles, pencils, paper, but please no weapons. And what did the future Nobel Prize winner do? He said guns and weapons. You can make a metaphor out of that, because Carter said, we know what's best for you in South Salvador. We're the United States. We're number one. You can make a metaphor out of that. Imagine your mother and father, and you have children at home, and in the other room you hear them start to squabble a little bit. They're fighting over who's going to control the toys. And one says to the other, those are my toys. You can't have them. The other one says, no, they're my toys. You can't have them. And you overhear that. And you go in and say, oh, children starting to fight, hey? I know how to solve your problem. Here's a gun for you. Here's a gun for you. I'll come back in an hour, see how you're doing. You come back an hour later, there's blood everywhere, bullet holes in the walls, shooting each other. Still alive, though, gasping. No, 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 my toys. My toys, you can't have them. You're the all-wise parent. Oh, children still fighting, hey? I know how to solve your problem. Here's a bigger gun for you. Bigger gun for you. That was El Salvador. So Lily spoke. That day in the class was a young girl named Hannah Flam. Her mother works for Center for Science and the Public Interest. Hannah was the only one that day took notes. The only one. The others listening, but Hannah was writing it down. You could tell Lily was connecting. After class, after the school day was over, everybody rushes out to the cars, head for the sports programs, head for the drama club meeting, head home, take the buses. Everybody left that day except one student, and that was Hannah. And where did she go, do you think? She went to find Lily, and found Lily in one of the bathrooms. Lily, I want to help you clean up. Give me a mop. Hannah cleaned up that day with Lily, and the next day and the next day, and for the rest of the year, she became Lily's bathroom assistant. Other students wonder, what's happened to Hannah? Gee, the Lily can't help you get ahead in life. Well, where'd Hannah go that summer, do you think? She went to El Salvador. She's been back 11 times. And she wrote a letter to me. In the summer of 2005, Hannah wrote, I just returned from El Salvador. If you can't find me in 4 years, you know where to look. I'm in love with that country. Living with the people and becoming so integrated in their lives and lifestyle makes it difficult to come back. This year's peacemaking consisted of building an after-school center for 2 weeks and then working for another week in the village I went to last year. She had a little trouble in the village. I had my first encounter with machismo. Guys come up to me on the work site saying I couldn't carry the cement buckets. I shouldn't be working outside. I wasn't strong enough to lift blocks. The first time someone told me to put down the shovel, I was surprised. But I didn't think to put up a fight. I handed him the shovel and felt defeated like I'd never been before. And that was the last time anybody ever told me what to do. And where's Hannah now? Well, she's in third year at NYU Law School, and they have a joint program with Harvard Kennedy, the Kennedy School. She's gone to a 4-year program, and she will probably be a public interest lawyer, all because of Lily. I had another letter from a boy named Peter Hartman, and Peter went to Wilson High School, and he wrote to me from Oberlin College. And he wrote a very common letter, and he said, he asked me if there was an internship that I knew about. Can you get me an internship here with one of the NGOs here in town? So I wrote back to Peter. I said, Peter, I can get you an internship, but I have a better job for you. It's outdoors, you make a lot of money, it's healthy, and you can socialize. And that would be to become a caddy at a golf course. So we talked a little bit about that, and I was able to recommend him to a club. And I wrote back to Peter, I said, you have 4 choices of clubs. The top choice would be the Chevy Chase Club, which is close to your home. Columbia Country Club, Burning Tree Golf Club, and Congressional Country Club. The current rate for carrying 2 bags is about $85. That's good money for 5 hours for a college lad. In cash, which means no taxes out. Unless you want to be taxed to oil America's war machine. So there he was. So I called up the pro at the club, a fine man named Jim Fitzgerald, whose daughter I had in class at BCC. So Peter spent the day caddying at the Chevy Chase Club. He wrote, I'm reporting back from my first day of caddying. One bag for 18 holes wasn't too bad, and I was paid well. I just have to keep getting there at 6:30 a.m., and I can expect to go out about twice a day. So he said the exposure at the club was to two very different worlds within our society. I'm not part of either of the worlds, but it's remarkable to realize that I'm more familiar with the culture of the older black caddies than the rich white men who send their sons to Georgetown Prep. So there was Peter, and I told him I said to him, caddying at Chevy Chase would expose you to two worlds, the one of WASP pedigrees and the other of non-pedigrees where caddies orbit, spinning around suns and moons of their own making, some as down and outs, a few as drifters who can't or won't hold regular jobs. I told Peter to hopefully he could caddy for Chief Justice John Roberts, who's a member of the club, and as he's holding the pin on the putting green to call out, "Stop sanctioning the death penalty." Guaranteed to make him 3-putt too. So that was Peter. Peter graduated from Oberlin recently, and he's back in town, and he's doing just well. Another student wrote to me named Hannah Levin. Hannah was in my class at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. It was a spring semester. She took my class in the fall, and I was teaching down in the hall. I had a guest speaker, someone going to talk to us about the School of the Assassins in Columbus, Georgia, where they trained soldiers to go back and kill people in Latin America. And we had a wonderful guest speaker. Hannah was in her economics class and wanted to come hear the guest speaker in my class down the hall. And she wrote a letter to me right during class. I'm sitting in second period watching an extremely boring video about what defines a recession. When I asked my second period teacher if I could come to the guest speaker in peace studies, he responded, "Are you kidding? Of course not." So instead of listening to someone who's addressing a pressing issue facing us, the closing of the School of the Americas, I sit in the back of the classroom not paying attention to something I don't really care about. There's something seriously wrong with our education system, and I'm seeing it more and more every day. I miss your class so much. Maybe my first period teacher will be more understanding and I can come to your class for the next speaker. So there was Hannah. And of course, she realized what was going on. I wrote about a 3,000-word answer to her. And I made the point that the schools process students too often, as though they're slabs of cheese, going to Velveeta High School on the way to Mozzarella University and Cheddar Grad School. How was that for a cheesy metaphor? Was it not well crafted? All right. That one was bad. Every once in a while, one of those slips out. I'm in a 12-point therapy program to get over it. So Hannah caught on exactly what I was doing. And I, at BCC and also Wilson, I give no homework, I give no exams and no tests. I think those are all forms of academic violence. A theory most people agree with in school. Why do we do it to them? Well, because it's a cheese factory. We got to process you. Well, there's two ways to learn. You either learn by fear or you learn by desire. And I think fear-based learning, make an A on that test, get ahead, score well. Well, I think grades are often meaningless. I think grades are degrading. I agree with the great novelist Walker Percy, who had that wonderful line, I think it's The Moviegoer, the name of the book. And he had a line in there that said, "You can make all A's in school and go out and fail at life." I've seen it over and over again. So I worry about my students who make too many A's in school. You have to wonder, what are they missing out on while they're grinding away? And they say, "Oh no, grades are important." I say, "Are they really?" I say, if you can ever go read the obituary page in the Times of the Post, and if you ever see an obituary that says John Smith, who had a 2.5 average in college, died of a heart attack yesterday, please tell me. And then read also Sunday Times and the Post. They have the marriage sections. Now, if you ever find a wedding announcement that says John Smith, who had a 3.5, married Sally Jones, who had a 2.1, please tell me. I'll raise your grade. A student wrote to me about her grade, and she said, "My name is Casey, and I was in your Peace Studies class at American University this past semester. I'm just writing to ask about my grade. I was quite shocked and slightly offended that I received a B+. That used to be a pretty good grade. Well, now I was happy to get a C when I went to college. But she's offended. So I came to every class, read every assignment, helped with videos, joined discussions where I could, and even gave up a critical part of my former diet for this class. I stopped eating meat." Well, that's good. So I wrote back. I said, "Thanks for your inquiry, Casey. It isn't often that students tell me that they are quite shocked and offended about a B+, especially when I'm told by friends and critics that I'm an overly generous grader." So we went on. Then I got another letter, a student who was offended by her A-. "You have ruined my chances to get a 4.0. I was overcome with guilt." So those are the grade mongers. They feel that, listen, you pay $60,000. Hey, give me an A. I paid for an A. So I keep telling them, go read Walker Percy. You can make all A's and go fail at life. Another letter came from a young woman named Hannah Mahan. And Hannah lives right here over on Northampton Street. And Hannah wrote to me a very poignant letter. She said, "I've been pondering something quite a bit lately, and I was wondering if you could share with me some of your thoughts on the subject. Here goes. I have always chosen to refrain from drinking and doing drugs because I have always known that I don't need intoxicants of that sort to enjoy myself. I also think that the way our society portrays teenage drinking and other drug doing is harmful, in that it feels like everyone's telling teenagers, oh, experimentation, that's fine." So I wrote a long letter back to her, and I praised her for taking a stand. You don't know what your principles are until they're tested. And they're tested when they go to college, because the drinking culture is just out of control. Every year there's a large number of parents who receive a phone call from the university, "Come pick up your child's body. They died of alcohol poisoning." So I said to Hannah, "You may have come across it, that ambiguity-free line from T.S. Eliot. In a world of fugitives, the person taking the opposite road will appear to run away. That's you. By not running with the pack, when it heads to the parties, bars, or the refrigerators or the kegger, you're the mad one. You don't go with them." Hannah Mahan went on from Wilson to study at Middlebury College. Her parents have been very generous to my Peace Center. Every year they give me $15,000 to distribute to my students. Last year I gave an award to a student named Rosie Cohen. Is Linda Ryden here today? Linda Ryden is Rosie's mother. And she was a very star student. And she's now at Haverford. And Rosie Cohen also took a stand. I have a little rule in my classes. I always announce the first day. In this class, no one's allowed to ever ask any questions. Instead, do something much braver. Don't ask questions, question the answers. What answers? The ones anybody gives you that says the answer is violence. I always ask them, how do you make a difference in the world? I say, that's easy. Start to be different. Stay away from the alcohol, stay away from the meat. I always ask them 4 questions about I asked them 4 questions. How many of you want to reduce cruelty in the world? Every hand goes up. How many want to reduce poverty in the world? Every hand goes up. How many want to reduce global hunger in the world? Every hand goes up. How many want to have a healthy body? Every hand goes up. Does anybody know the answer to all those questions? Stop eating meat, and you'll do it. I do a quiz also in my classes, and I want to do one right now, if I may, Bradley.
Speaking of questions, do you want to leave a little time?
I just want to do one more quiz, and then I'll take some questions. I do this with all of my classes. I call out about 5 or 6 names, and whoever gets all questions correctly, I have a little prize. And we're going to do a quiz right here now. That's $100. You have that on camera right there? All right. Okay. A little risky. There's $100. I notice everybody's focused all of a sudden. All of you capitalists. All right. Okay, we'll run through the first names quick. Who was Robert E. Lee? Anybody know Robert E. Lee? Okay, we know that, Civil War. Napoleon, we all know Napoleon. Okay, we're all 2 for 2, looking good. All right. 3, Robert E. Lee. Okay, Robert E. Lee. All right, we all know. Yeah. You'll have to rattle that saber. Okay, next 3 names. Who is Janetta Sagan? No hands on Janetta Sagan. All right. If this was the peace-loving society, every hand would have gone up. Janetta was a young Italian schoolgirl captured in the 1940s by the Nazis, locked up in prison, going to be executed, managed to escape, and came to the University of Chicago, married Leonard Sagan, a doctor. Janetta brought to the West Coast the Amnesty International, that great political prisoner program, and won the Medal of Freedom in the White House. I tell my classes about Janetta Sagan. Next name, who is Arthur Laffin? No one knows Arthur. He runs the Catholic Worker House right here in town, carrying on the good work of Dorothy Day. And there she is. There he is. Next name, who is Timothy Shriver? All right, we have a few people know about Tim Shriver. Well, he is the author of a great book. It's right over on the side. I saw it over there yesterday. Tim Shriver wrote a great book, Fully Alive. And Tim is the son of Sergeant Eunice Shriver, and I owe debts to Sergeant Shriver I'll never repay. Gave me my first job here in town. Tim Shriver is here today. Tim, would you just raise your hand so we can all applaud you? Listen, don't feel bad about flunking the quiz. I never worry about losing it. I can always count on American education. Listen, I have some good news for you about the book. Anybody who buys a book today is going to get this book free. It's buy one free. It's buy one. It's sort of like Joseph A. Banks, buy one, get one free. And this is a book about baseball. Some of my columns are from the Post. And on the cover is my wife and my son, Eddie. And this, I write about home run baseball camp. which my son John McCarthy has been running for about 25 years, former minor league baseball player with the Orioles. And John has a great essay in this book about how he played college ball with the great Luis Gonzalez, who was at the Diamondbacks and hit that base hit that won the World Series. And John, who has a great athletic program. John's in the back in the yellow. Would you please wave, John? Thank you. So if you buy this book, you get this book free. So let's take a few questions, Brad, if we may. Are there any comments or disagreements?
Try to make it to that mic or that mic if you can.
I'll start it up here, Coleman.
Ah, good.
I grew up next to Coleman. Got my start back in baseball with John, and obviously took alternatives to violence. Just a little anecdote. Last night I was just hanging out. Said I was going to go see you today, and I run into a woman who was with you on 9/11. She was a freshman in the crowd at AU, and she's now I think working at Ashoka Changemakers. And I think it was just astonishing fundamentally that you've sort of left this gigantic place. I do have a real question though.
This is Tomas Dingas, whose dad and mother are very wonderful people here in town.
So the first thing, apparently there's a big rah atmosphere, at AU, and you apparently say to whoever did this, I am sorry for whatever we did that made you act in retribution. She went up to you afterwards and said, I want you to be my mentor. She then proceeds to be tight with you for the next 3 years. And was very close.
I remember that day. Yeah.
Question: what are your thoughts on big tobacco and big money in politics, and how do you approach people who what's your method of dealing with people or arguing or bringing up sort of peace with people who are in some ways very different from you?
Well, you have to take people exactly where they are, and you can't judge people for what they know or what they don't know. You have to accept people. If you start to preach down to them, they don't like it. And so I try to do a little reading and get them involved in some of the literature. And we put people all through our schools with rarely a course on conflict resolution. I think we could lower the divorce rate in America if we taught people in early grade school, middle and high school, and college how to deal with basic conflicts, the people you're living with. And I think we make great progress there, let alone all the international disputes going on. There's an old expression: if you want to have a chance for peace in the world, don't talk to your friends, talk to your enemies. And that worked with Nixon, did that with China. Reagan did that with Soviet Union. And now China is loaning America money. They must wake up laughing every morning. We're saving the capitalists from their own excesses, and we ruined our economy by oiling our war machine. And here's a visual that explains exactly what's going on. This is from the American Friends Service Committee. You see those on the left? That's military spending. It comes to 59% of all discretionary funding. And on the right, you see the social programs: 4% for education, 4% for diplomacy. And that's why the college students graduate from college owing enormous amounts of money, because we wasted their money on killing people in 2 wars that can't be won, can't be explained, and can't be afforded. And that's what's going on. And that's why all of us need to figure out what we can do to decrease the violence and increase the peace. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. The letters that you read from the book are all, I think, seemingly from white upper middle class kids. I'm interested to know what happened to the children that you went and met with in the first school that you described.
Well,
and have you come across children from that kind of background who have also become activists?
Well, I taught for 4 years in a prison called Oak Hill, which is out in Laurel, Maryland, where D.C. Superior Court judges would send students. It's a very difficult class to teach because I'd walk in and I'd read a little Gandhi and read a little Tolstoy, and I couldn't connect until finally one day I said, "Does anybody here know how to steal a car?" Every hand went up, and one boy said, "You don't know how to steal a car? What's the matter? You're ignorant. How can you know how to steal a car?" I can quote Shakespeare, I said. So yeah, take that person where they are. I said, I want to go try and do it. I didn't ever do it, but I thought it was a good skill to have. So you need to take people where they are, and regardless of race or gender, and then try to liberate each other. And so that's what we try to do. Yes.
Hi, thank you for speaking. It was great listening to the students. I work at a little progressive Quaker school, and we talk a lot about conflict resolution. And one of the things I find is that kids are great at getting to the point where they can say, we agree to disagree. But moving beyond to healing is often the trickiest part. And I'm curious to know how you may have taught that, or how you get people in general to move to that stage of conflict resolution.
Sure. It's like any other subject. They walk into our classroom. They don't know what 2 and 2 is. So we tell them 2 and 2 is 4. They look up. Is it really? I know it's 5. No, it's 2 and 2 is 4. So you got to teach conflict resolution the same way, like any other topic. But we don't teach it. Yet every year we teach the math, 8 years of elementary and middle school, high school, you get more math, even though you probably won't use that much math in your life. After you have 8th grade math, you got about 98% of all you're ever going to need. And for the other 2%, hire an accountant. They'll do it for you. So peace education ought to be the same way. But we got to make it happen, and so that's what we're trying to do, and make a little. But schools are very hard to crack, because the testing mania, leave no child untested. For what reason? So we're trying to break it free. But I wish you well. You can do it. Where did you go to elementary school?
I went to the Woods Academy in Bethesda.
Ah, good for you. Yeah, I'm speaking there next Thursday, I think. Yeah, good for you. Keep it going, sister. Yes, thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
My name's Elizabeth. I teach at a Montessori school. Montessori Education for Peace. And I have a question about working with adolescents, actually, but it's for all students, about engagement. Like you said, there are so many competing things, and I find that our students, when I taught high school, just are so overextended that when trying to create a space where they can become activists and they can really dedicate themselves fully to a great work for peace, that it competes with swimming and sports and all these other things. And I wonder how, if you have any advice to get them engaged in Lincoln so that this is what they dedicate themselves to, because this is what is so important.
We ought to have one day a week where they get outside the school, go work at an internship, or go work in a hospital, go work in a law firm, go work in Congress, go help the garbage collectors collect the garbage, go get some experiential knowledge. The trouble with us teachers, we're so busy cramming theories into their minds, they leave us theory rich but experience poor. Get out and go take care of somebody's pain. And then you learn, and that stays with you forever. But we keep them locked up 6-7 hours a day, plus after school activities. They're full of anxiety. That's why I give no homework and no exams and no tests. Come in, just sit down and talk. Montessori never gave grades, homework, or tests.
No, we don't.
But yet the D.C. school system does. Now, who knows more? Maria Montessori or the D.C. school system? Socrates never gave homework or test. So does D.C. know more about education than Socrates does? Don't think so. But turn them loose 1 or 2 days a week. Go out and take care of people. I thank you, sister, for your question. Yes.
Thank you, Coleman. Before I ask my question, I just want to say thank you to Coleman. I was a student of his both in high school and in college, and I went on and got a degree in peace studies from George Washington, largely because of Coleman, and went on to work in peace, to work at the Humane Society of the United States to help prevent violence against animals. And I am eternally grateful to you, Coleman, for all that you did for me, both as a mentor then and as an inspiration too. I often miss seeing you in the Washington Post, and I remember reading especially your columns about Norman Schwarzkopf, which I always got a kick out of. And I'm wondering if you might be willing to offer some comments, since we're not going to be seeing any writings of yours on it, probably, about what's going on with Iran right now, with Tom Cotton's letter and the Obama administration's negotiations. What would President McCarthy do?
Well, before I answer that, Paul, I want to tell the audience that Paul was the founder after college of Compassion Over Killing, which is one of the great public interest groups. He's now with the Humane Society of the United States. Paul has a wonderful arrest record. He has been arrested several times for
people moving further and further away.
For going into these factory farms and taking films of how they abuse the animals, and it is a horrible sight.
That's kind of
You can find Paul in a little video. It's called 45 Days, and Paul's in that. Broke into one of the camps. He's done so well at it, and now the legislatures are passing laws to put Paul in prison. They call them.
I was one of the people who raised my hand in the prison who could steal a car, right?
Yes. So when I brag about my former students, Paul, your name is right at the top.
That's
so I appreciate you being here today.
Well, it's an honor to be here.
Sure.
So what would you do with the Ayatollahs?
I would do exactly what we said before. If you want to have a chance for peace, don't talk to your friends, talk to your enemies. Obama, get on the airplane and fly to Kabul and go talk to them. Oh, you can't talk to evildoers. You hear that? And we demonize them. It makes it easier to kill them. Oh, they're subhumans. And so we did it with China, and it worked. We did it with Soviet Union, it worked. And that's what we ought to do. Instead, we keep demonizing each other. You remember during 1991, George Bush wanted to find out, what can I get the public to do to get behind me, that I can go invade Iraq? They did a poll, and it came back, call Saddam Hussein another Hitler. And that's what Bush called him. The next day, what Saddam Hussein called Bush? He's the great Satan. So you're Hitler and Satan fighting each other. They were demonizing. And so that's what, you see, very few politicians will do that. They appeal. All you have to do is say, we're being attacked. That's what Goebbels once said. And while you're telling the public we're being attacked, condemn the pacifists for being disloyal. So that's the difficulty, but I think if we educated people in schools, we'd find out there are other ways to solve our conflicts without fish guns, armies, bombs, and nukes, whether in your home or your workplace or anywhere. But peace education is now in its infancy. So we have to make a few moves. But every high school in the country ought to have at least a program, not just one course. I just teach one course. It's almost nothing. But I've been trying for years at BCC High School. Why don't we get a well-funded course here and maybe even spend as much money on a peace studies program as you spend on the football team? I'm really getting carried away now. Anyway, thank you, Paul. Yes. Yeah, good, Brad.
Hi. I'm Victor. I'm a fellow pacifist, and I'm wondering what your answer is to the question of what would you have done if you were a pacifist at the beginning of the Second World War? How would you have opposed monsters like Hitler or Stalin?
Sure.
I've never really had known an answer that I'm satisfied with, which tries to answer. What do you do when you come against human beings like that?
Well, you have to do prevention before the crisis rather than intervention after. We intervene after. You can go back and argue Second World War endlessly. But the fact is, we did not do prevention before. Denmark. There's a great story about Denmark. They were invaded by the Nazis, and King Christian X organized the people there, and they pretty much survived. They wouldn't cooperate. It was risky, but they couldn't defeat Hitler with guns or bombs or weapons. So they went underground, got an underground press. They did all they could to transport Jewish people to Sweden, and the example of Denmark is still there. There's another story called a small town called Les Chambon in France, and there the Nazis came, and they were taught long before the Nazis came by the pacifist minister, we will not kill the soldiers. It's going to be risky. That village was pretty much spared. Other villages in central France were wiped out by the Nazis because they tried to kill the Nazi invaders. They were wiped out by the Germans. This one little village made it. It's where Albert Camus wrote The Plague. He was living there. And so that was an example. And the author of that book, a professor from Wesleyan University, went back to the town and wrote a wonderful book about it called Weapons of the Spirit. And he went and found a German officer and asked, why did you not take out that one village of pacifists? And the German officer said, we had weapons of steel, but they had weapons of the spirit which were far superior. I'm just giving you a soundbite answer. We could debate this one endlessly. But Hannah Arendt wrote about that and so we let it go too long. But anyway, before we go, I want to thank all of you for coming out today. Just before we go, and we have a nice baseball book. The season's coming up. There's a story in that book right there about a boy named Emmanuel Burris who came to home run baseball camp when he was 6 years old. And my son John mentored Emmanuel Burris. He went to Wilson High School. John helped him get into Kent State University. And then he was signed by the San Francisco Giants. They offered him $800,000. John told him, don't take it. You're worth much more. Emmanuel Burris said, no, they're going to give it to somebody else. John said, hold out. You're worth more. So Manny did hold out and got him up, the Giants, to $1.2 million. He's won 2 World Series rings, and he's a great athlete. Went to Wilson High School. And so that's in a little baseball book, too. I want to acknowledge John Pauxis and his wife Beverly here today, who work for Habitat Humanity, and Beverly works at the Washington Home as a hospice carer. But anyway, before we go, just one last thought. This is a couple of quotes, right epigraphs right up front. To find the way to make peace with ourselves and to offer it to others, both spiritually and politically, is the most important kind of learning. To accept our abilities and limitations and the differences of others. This is the contentment that gives life its highest value. It frees us to grow without restraint and to settle without pressure. That's from Wendy Schwartz, and one more from Medley Beatty. Speak your truth. Listen when others speak theirs too. When you let go of fear, you will learn to love others, and you will let them love you. Open your heart to love, for that is why you are here. Thank you. Before you go, just one last word. If you care about being peacemakers and go out into the world, make sure the world never changes you, because it will try to. And if you do care about being peacemakers, there's only one word that really matters. If you want to become, as Martin Luther King said, somebody who is other-centered, not self-centered, you can do that. And anytime you want to come to any of my classes, I have a 7:25 a.m. class. I know you're all early risers here in Northwest D.C. You're welcome to my class every morning at BCC. You're welcome to my class at American University. You have my email address in our Peace Center, and you're welcome anytime. And if you do care about being peacemakers, there's only one word that really matters. A simple, sacred, one-syllable word. Start. Start. And I thank you very much.